So, Lorenzo, I want to pick your brain a little bit. I know that you think a lot about user research. You do a lot of user research. I know you're doing some experimentation around different types of questions to ask. Can you talk about something new that you have been testing or working on? I don't know if there is something new, but if there is, can you talk about it? I'm wondering if there is something interesting you'd like to share.
Yeah, sure. So, I've been playing around a lot with kind of like mixing up some survey questions that I ask to the customers of my client when I set up a survey, post-purchase survey. And one of the ones that got me the highest insightful type of responses are actually two. I started testing them maybe like 3-4 months ago. I'm gonna read them to you, and then maybe you can comment on those questions. So the first one,
And before we move forward, just so I'm clear about the term, post purchases, they've made the order and then we are
Yep,
contacting them or through email or
correct.
something.
Yeah, so I just bought, and then I'm either emailing them, right, through like a Klaviyo campaign or segment, or maybe that question is being asked as a pop-up on the thank you page after they hit like buy now, basically, right?
Got it.
Now the first question I ask is, what's one thing that you were skeptical about before buying our product? And then I put a parenthesis, and I'll tell you in a second why I put this in a parenthesis. I say, your answer can't be price. And the reason why I'm putting this as in a parenthesis is that at the beginning, when I first tested this question, everybody was like price, which is always like one of the biggest objections that people give me whenever I ask them why they haven't, what was one thing that they were skeptical about.
Which
So
is
then I'm
why
like,
anyone listening also, if I think we did an episode on price justification, so I'm hoping that they can search for that. Watch that video. We think price is a big point of friction, and there are many copy techniques to improve price. And by the way, I should also mention anyone who's watching the video right now, do subscribe to our channel. This is a series we're going to be doing for the next couple of years. Every day, we're going to be covering one interesting topic. These are unpolished ideas, but we think that we're going to cover every aspect. We don't think there's going to be any source for more direct-to-consumer buyer psychology, copywriting, survey,
CRO,
research type
marketing.
topics. So yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'll put the link to the video in the top. So that's the first question, right? The follow-up question to that is, even if you were originally skeptical, what changed your mind and made you decide to try our product anyways?
That's a great question.
What do you think about these two questions?
Yeah, I think that, I think that skepticism question is so important because, I've heard about versions of this question where sometimes they'll say like, what nearly held you back from making a purchase? A lot of times when you ask that question, a lot of people give responses around the UI UX part, like, I couldn't find the right product, or I couldn't, the color, I wasn't sure about the color. And I think those are useful questions. I think what I really like about this question is it's really getting to the source of the psychology. So what were you skeptical about? What were you skeptical about in terms of the claim we were making? Or, if you have, they could say that I've tested 20 products before. So I think it gives you really interesting insight. So I really like that first question. And of course, the second one is really important as well, because it says, what key did you use to unlock the door? So I can use that. Yeah, I love it. It's really good. And, I'm assuming, Lorenzo, your vision is that once we get those kind of responses, is the idea to kind of maybe then update the product page to kind of, what are your thoughts about, like, okay, you get the responses, now what?
Yeah. So first of all, I collecting for the reasons why, like, what are the main things that made them skeptical, right? And I put them like in order of, like, imagine I got 200 responses. Maybe there's like 40% that say X, 20% that say. So I want to see like how popular those reasons are.
Yeah.
And then for the same reason, with the same process, I want to understand what made them change their mind, even if they were skeptical. And again, maybe people are like, oh, talking to a friend. Okay, that's like, yeah, sure. It's not very useful for me from a,
Actionable.
it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
actionable. Yeah, exactly. But then they were like, if they were like, oh, I saw some interesting reviews about my specific case, I'm like, okay, that's interesting. We need to like figure out a way to make the reviews either more prominent, or motivate them to read a bunch of reviews,
Yeah.
or tell them that it's possible to filter by X and Y and Z type of maybe like product feature or dimension and so on. So for me, it's like it's almost a way to come up with a bunch of experiment and test ideas that I can try on the product page.
And I think this is a really good point. I want to add one thing here. I think a lot of times brands are kind of nervous. In fact, it's funny. It kind of it relates to something I just posted on LinkedIn, where I was talking about someone. We had this idea for changing the word reviews to fact check by, right? And someone said, well, doesn't this then make people even more suspicious? And so I want to make this point over here related to what you said. Sometimes a CEO might say, well, like we worked so hard to like make the sale happen. Like, do I really want to ask a person why they were skeptical? Well, I mean, marketing is about a trade-off. Like if the idea is to like be perfect and not do anything that's uncomfortable, that's a strategy. But if your goal is to grow 10 times faster than your competitors, you're going to have to confront the ugly truths. And the ugly truths are the fact that people sometimes, many times, looking at a product and saying, this is not going to work for me. And if you don't listen to that feedback, then there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to be tone deaf and you continue kind of talking about things that nobody cares about. The other thing I want to add over here is that there are very clever ways of framing the question. So, for
Yeah.
example, it can come from the CEO. You can say, I'm the CEO of the company, and I want to really thank you for this purchase. And I'm always thinking of ways to make the product. Then you frame it that way versus like a cold email where you say, what are you
Totally.
skeptical about? So, do you agree? I mean, do you think there's a way to
Yeah,
dress
so
this up? So,
I want to talk about the origin of these two questions. So there's a reason why I came up with these two questions. So the first one, obviously, you with your healthy skeptic framework influenced me a lot, right? It's something that I've never thought about, right? This concept of skepticism. I guess I was naming him in the wrong way, right? But then, I've done reviews mining for maybe like, 60, 70 companies. And a common pattern across different companies was, you know, I wasn't too sure about X, or I was a little bit skeptical about this product before buying it. And then I saw Y, right? And I decided to pull the trigger and go ahead and buy anyways. And I'm like, oh my God, I almost had an aha moment. I'm like, oh, like sounds like a lot of people, and again, it was across different products and a lot of across different businesses. Um, and it sounds like people are kind of like not suspicious, but skeptical about the product. And then they see something, right? And they change their mind. Maybe it's multiple things, right? And they change your mind. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to ask that question.
no, it's a really good question. So, I think what you could even do is in the description of the video, if you can just include those two questions so people can swipe it off. Um, great. I hope you guys saw value in this. And this is the kind of stuff we have another 100 videos. This is the kind of stuff that we kind of talk about. So subscribe.